If you saw my last video, you might know that I had an issue with my drive shaft hitting my muffler and damaging it. So today we're going to replace it. I've got a new Dorman drive shaft from RockAuto, and it looks like it's going to be a pretty simple job. So the front just slips over a shaft, and the back is just 4 bolts. And those bolts are 17mm, so grab yourself a 17mm wrench and a socket and swivel. I've got this set up, and also this setup seems to work, so we're going to try that. We may have to break the nuts free, so I may use the hammer, and I've gone ahead and used some Amsoil MP on those nuts and bolts. So let's get going. So I gave this nut a little bit of heat and a little bit of hammering, and it came loose, so we'll remove that. I'm going to be careful because it's hot, but it's loose enough now I can remove it by fingers. And I'll repeat that with the other 4. They're fairly accessible, so we don't really have to turn the drive shaft. I'll just move to the other side to get the other 2. In my repair manual it suggests having the rear wheels off the ground so you can turn the drive shaft, but I'm not going to do that. I'd rather have the rear wheels on the ground and keep the drive shaft from moving when I'm trying to undo the bolts, and it's also safer. So I do have the truck up on ramps on the front just for a little more clearance, and I do have everything chalked off so the truck's not going to move. So I've got all the bolts removed, and I did get some penetrating oil all the way around here because this mating surface is kind of rusted, and I heated it up as well and tapped on these ears, being careful not to tap on the pinion itself because I don't want to damage this part, because that's going to stay on the truck and not be replaced. So I kind of tapped around on these 4 kind of ears just to loosen it up, and it's ready to drop down now, so I'll try and get that on camera. Okay, so that will drop down and it will slide off the front shaft. So you need to get a drain pan under the front because you're losing your transfer case fluid. So that's where the front of the shaft slides out of the transfer case, and I've just got it resting here on these supports. But make sure you got a pan there because you will lose your fluid, especially if you got the front end up. I think that's the reason why I did lose the fluid. It's because I've got the front of the truck up. Some might come out if you've got your truck level, but if you've got the front of the truck up, you are definitely going to lose some. So I'm going to get this shaft pulled out of here and get the new one ready to put up. So I've got the old shaft out and I'm comparing it to the new one, and there's some similarities, but there's also some differences. Perhaps the most important is to check the length to make sure that they're the same length. The yokes seem identical, the U-joints seem identical. The yokes and U-joints on both shafts are all labeled Spicer, so they're probably using the same ones. One difference I notice here is that this shaft is this uniform diameter all the way along. The old OEM one is wider. I'm not sure why. Perhaps they made it a little bit bigger to make it stronger, but I'm hoping that the new one is just as strong. But you can see here where I scored it, a smaller diameter shaft might actually be better because of that. Yeah, so it looks like we're good to go. We'll I'm going to go in there and clean up the face of the mounting surface before I put the new shaft on. So this is what I'm going to clean up here. It's not bad here, but over here it's not. It's all rusty. You can use a wire brush. I'm going to use some fine grit sandpaper and just clean that up, and then I'll wipe that off with a rag before we mount the new one up. This is where the drive shaft was hitting the muffler when I was towing under load. Might try and sand that down a little bit so it's not sharp, so it's more flat. And got the traction bars on. I didn't have them on when I was towing. The traction bars help prevent the axle and the drive shaft from shifting, which is what happened. And now we're putting in a new drive shaft. So we've got the drive shaft lifted up into place, and I put some transmission fluid on the shaft so it would slide into the seal well. And those splines are not greased, they're lubricated by the transmission fluid in the transfer case. And they're not keyed, you just have to line up the splines and make sure the splines are allowing you to put your bolts in. So have your bolts line up. And normally, if you were reinstalling the same drive shaft, you would mark this so you could line up your mark when you put this back on. But since this is a new drive shaft, we couldn't really do that. I tried to have it in the same orientation. With there's a little gap here. The gaps on these sides where they were before, and basically this part the same as it was before. So we'll put our 4 bolts in there and start tightening that back up. The repair manual that I have wants you to install new nuts and bolts here. This kit did not come with new nuts and bolts, and RockAuto did not sell them for this, so I am going to reuse them. They seem to be in pretty good shape. They're not rusted like some of the other nuts and bolts on this truck. And the torque spec on these guys is 61 foot-pounds. To get everything snugged, come back with a torque wrench and try and do that. I don't know. It might be difficult to get the torque wrench to reach. Well, let's give it a shot. So once you've got your drive shaft bolts bolted up to 61 foot-pounds, you're going to want to level out your truck. Grab a red automatic transmission fluid, Amsoil Easy Pack, your 10mm hex, and you're going to check your fluid level. You're also going to want to check to make sure that your seal's not leaking. So crack your drain plug or your fill plug. The fluid should be up to the bottom of the fill hole. We did lose a bunch, so we are probably going to have to add some. Get your in there. Just going to add till it starts coming out. There we go. Keep your rag handy too. So that's topped up. Didn't take much. Snug that up. Now it's time for a test ride. And you want to just check everything again, make sure your bolts are still torqued down, your steel's good. Make sure there's no noise or vibrations. So if this was helpful, please like the video, give me a comment, any tips that I may have missed or suggestions, and don't forget to enable notifications for more videos. Thanks.